on this episode of Raising the Wild Ones podcast. I guess I'll just come. You know what? Me and Caleb like to look at and think about some of the weirder parts of the Bible. And actually, I heard something earlier today. I even sent it to you, where the guy says, at the very beginning of it, he says, if it's weird, it's probably important. What's the Septuagint, Caleb? Caleb, do you remember what the Septuagint is?
The Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. Yeah.
See, you are a redneck theologian. You're a redneck theologian, though, Caleb.
2 Samuel 21:16. Then an Ishbi-Benob, nailed it, who was one of the Ishbi-Benob, who was one of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose bronze spear was 300 shekels. They said, secular archaeologists say, like, basically it's way, way, way too big for a normal person. So clearly it has to be armor for a bunch of people. Or biblical archaeologists say, well, or it could have been chainmail for a giant.
Raising the Wild Ones podcast.
Welcome to Raising the Wild Ones podcast. I'm Dustin, and this is when you say you're Caleb.
Oh, I'm Caleb.
See, you're right. We do need to do something at the beginning. This is funky. This is how we open every podcast, and it's just weird sometimes.
We just lost some listeners.
You know who we lost? I bet you we lost Justin. I'm calling Justin out right now.
Hey,
Justin's
I'm going to get him back. Why can't humans hear a dog whistle?
Why?
Because dogs can't whistle.
You said it wasn't very good a minute ago. Like a minute ago, you're like, it's not a good one. That's a pretty decent dad joke right there.
Well, that's so that one was, why can't you have a nose 12 inches long?
Why?
Because then it would be a foot.
Oh, see, that's not bad either.
Yeah, that's not bad. That was the one I was thinking.
That's not terrible, but the first one was definitely the better one of the two.
Yeah. Okay, one more. Why can't you hear a pterodactyl go to the bathroom?
Why?
Because the P is silent.
Okay, I won't lie. I think we need to get our kids in here, like, while we say these dad jokes every once in a while. Because that one would have really made my youngest, like, die. Yeah. He would have died at that one.
Maybe he'll like
that good one. That's a good one.
And I'm out.
And you're out. Well, we are back at it, I guess, everybody. For the last couple weeks, you've probably noticed, like, I did one by myself, which was just weird and awkward because it was just me talking to the chair over there. And then Caleb and Jessica did one, which was way better than me by myself. And we've actually had a little bit of trouble, like, kind of getting together, but we are back at it, back in the saddle, as they say.
It's a busy time of life.
Yes,
right
now. It really is. And we're just We're just two redneck theologians. That's right.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes. There you go.
Came up with that like a week ago, and
Dustin came up with it, and it's good.
I'm gonna say it all the time. I'm gonna our next interview, when we interview Judd again, I'm gonna be like, we're just two redneck theologians. I want to see what he says, see if he likes it.
I bet he likes it.
But I was trying to think on how to actually start this one off. And so me and Caleb, I guess I'll just come. You know what? Me and Caleb like to look at and think about some of the weirder parts of the Bible. And actually, I heard something earlier today. I even sent it to you, where the guy says, at the very beginning of it, he says, if it's weird, it's probably important, which was interesting to think about,
Yeah. And that comes from, which of course I don't know him, but I've heard podcasts where it's Dr. Michael Heisner talks about it.
It's Dr. Michael Heisner who says it?
Yeah, I think that quote came from him.
And so, like, there's a ton of areas with weirdness part of the Bible, but today, what we're going to talk about? We're going to jump straight into weirdness, like 2 feet, jumping straight in, and we're going to talk about giants. So what do you think about giants, Caleb? In the Bible in particular?
Well, first off, I'll say, I think, so me and Jessica went out of town 2 weekends ago, and we went to Abilene, Texas, and in Abilene there's a creation museum. It's a small creation museum, and we were looking for things to do. We'd been to Abilene some, and we're like looking around like, hey, let's go to this creation museum, and we didn't really know what to expect. And so we're going through this creation museum, and the lady that runs it is really awesome and very knowledgeable. And there was this big section on giants. So we're like, she was all into it and telling us a whole bunch about it, and it was really neat. So that kind of got me listening to giant podcast and reading a little bit about them from the Bible. So it's really neat and interesting. So if you're in Abilene, I'll tell you to go by there, and we're trying to work on maybe doing a
Maybe
podcast at the Creation Museum with this lady, so that maybe
because what
will
it
happen
so
in the
most of the
future.
podcasts we do is through Zoom, but what did you say that she probably couldn't figure out Zoom?
Yeah, they may. Yeah, it
They're
may be
not the most
easier to.
technological.
Yeah,
We may just show up and do it.
we may go, and
Yeah.
yeah, it would be really fun. But so talking about giants now, this is one of those things, and I was listening to this after or this evening while I was kind of cleaning the house and cooking and stuff. I was listening to a couple podcasts about giants, and it's the person I was listening to was kind of talking about like there's kind of two, I guess, directions that like say preachers go or most people go with this thought. A lot of people, especially the secular world, kind of think that's weird, that's not true, or a lot of preachers may say, well, that's kind of weird, let's not except for of course Goliath. They'll tell the story of David and Goliath, but other than that they don't really a lot of times maybe talk about it a whole lot. um, or a lot of people just in the church in general don't like to talk about it or don't really talk about it, or maybe I don't, or maybe you have a thought there.
Well, I mean, even with Goliath, what was it? I mean, they said that in the Bible it talks about that Goliath's height was not 6 cubits and a span, right? Is that it? I have to go back and look at the passage.
I think so.
But it's like, I mean, they talk about the idea of cubits, and so if you think of like a cubit as just a foot, I mean, the guy was like 6.5 foot tall. I mean, I'm 6'1", right? But then there's like the discussion on a cubit that a cubit is actually like 2 foot is how much a cubit is. Well, then that puts Goliath at what, like 9.5 foot, like tall. I mean, it's a
I
big
think so.
dude,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like we have these things where, in a lot of ways, people want to try to, I don't know, like they want to try to take a lot of the weird stuff and normalize it to today. But then when you really like think about it not antiquity, but in like, biblical times, like the weird stuff mattered. And I mean, I don't know, you want to really start with giants. It's like Genesis 6 is kind of where you start to go.
Yeah. And one more
And
thing, real quick, I heard somebody say was kind of you want to put yourself when you're reading the Bible in the mindset that the early, that the people who were writing the Bible, you want to try to put yourself in their mindset. It wasn't written by people in the 21st century with our views of the world. It was written by those people, and to them the giants were a thing. It was something, it was a thing. Like they were real at one point. They existed. It wasn't like a question of, well, did they actually, and one interesting thing, which I don't have it on anymore, I looked up, like now, if you just like get on your phone and look up, are giants real? Or, like giant bones or something. Though nowadays you can't, like, you don't know what's real, what's not with AI. But it was
oh, with
funny,
AI,
like,
yeah.
like AI pops up on the top. It said something like, there's no archaeological evidence that giants ever existed. But then the
Oh,
next sentence was, but then the next sentence was something like, but there have been many bones found, like bones of giants found or something like that. So it was, didn't make sense.
I just Googled it, right? I just went into Google and I typed, "Are giants real?" And the AI comes up. AI tells us that no, giants are not real. There is no scientific evidence that humans have ever grown to be as large as depicted in mythology or fiction. Skeletons have been examined to show bigger people. It's what it says, like right under that. It's like
Yeah.
skeletons have
Yeah.
been examined. And it's like, so okay. It's interesting. Like, what are you trying to say here, giant? What are you trying to say, AI? And I don't know, it just makes you kind of like think and wonder about why in a lot of these kind of funkier topics are they so divisive, right? There's like you're either in one camp or the other camp. on did giants even exist, or even like at the beginning of Genesis 6, right? It talks about the sons of God. Like, what were the sons of God? A lot of the one side of that is there. So the righteous sons of Seth, right? Righteous sons of Seth.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so they're just saying it was just some other people that were on the earth, and so that's what they were, the righteous sons of Seth. And then the other camp is it's, the sons of God. They are literally like celestial beings. Is that a good way to put it? I sound very fancy when I say it like celestial beings
Like
from
angel. Yeah. Yeah.
like angels and stuff like that. And so it's like it makes you kind of think and kind of wonder here. And so that's like when you hear different words of giants, right? You got like giants, you've got like the Nephilim, right? The Rephaim.
Yeah, and one interesting thing, real quick, about you said this. So in Genesis 6, it talks about the sons of God coming down. What's the other book that's as old or older than Genesis?
Is it what
Trivia
you know? And what is it?
in
And I
the
don't know,
Bible.
say it. Oh,
No,
in the
not that.
Bible?
Yeah, in the Bible. What's the
Oh,
oldest book of the Bible?
Job.
Job. Perfect.
Yeah,
So in Job, at the beginning of Job, so I'm going to read real quick just to kind of bring that point home. So now
you're
there was a
going
day.
there.
So this is Job 1:6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. So, and then of course it's the conversation between the Lord and Job, or Lord and Satan about Job. So, like, there's another reference right there of the sons of God,
At the beginning of
now
Job.
at the
Well, and
beginning of Job with
that
God.
even sets up like a whole entire like thought process of okay, so there's God and there's other beings with God that are these sons
Yeah.
of God. And then it even gets kind of weird. I mean, no, we're not talking about Job, but then Satan's just like hanging out and it's like interesting. I mean, it's oh, this
And
podcast
that
could
we're
be
getting
like
off
three
topic,
hours
but that,
long.
yeah, that we're getting off topic, but that makes me then think about when Jesus said to Peter, Satan has asked to sift you, so I'll pray for you, or something like,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And so basically, it's kind of the same thing. He's basically maybe doing the same thing with Peter, but anyways,
Oh, I mean, there's
yeah.
we could go off. Maybe we need to do a whole nother series on just Satan and the deceiver and all that kind of fun stuff and the serpent. And you know what, Caleb? We're just going to talk about weird stuff on this
Back on
podcast from
topic.
time to time. And it's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Back
Yeah.
on focus. Focus, Dustin. I'm going to read Genesis 6. How about that? That might
Get
throw
after
us a
it.
little bit back on topic here. So
Get
I'm going to
after
read
it.
Genesis 6, verses 1 through 4 here. And so it says, now it came about when men began to multiply on the face of the land, and the daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of the men were beautiful. They took wives for themselves, whoever they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, because he also is flesh. Nevertheless, his days shall be numbered to to 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God came and the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. And then it goes on at 5, it says, The Lord saw that the wickedness was of man, or the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that had every intent, and the thoughts in his heart were evil, and only evil constantly. So that kind of starts the whole flood process. But
So it's your version in 4 said there were Nephilim on the earth.
yes, my version of 4 says they were Nephilim.
And what version do you have?
Oh, so the one I'm reading at here is a New American Standard Bible,
In ASB. So I've got
NASB.
the New King James, and it says there were giants on the earth in those days, which I think,
Ooh,
and what I've heard
giants.
on this is the Hebrew, if I'm saying, I hope I'm saying this right, I'm remembering this right. The Hebrew, I believe, is Nephilim, and the Septuagint translates it as basically giants, I think, or
Yeah.
that Nephilim. So if I remember that right, so I'm pretty sure the Hebrew was Nephilim, and the Septuagint translated it to giants. And I
Ooh,
could be wrong
here's
on that,
what's
but
the Septuagint, Caleb? Caleb, do you remember what the
the
Septuagint is?
Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. Yeah,
See, you are
I
a
learned that
redneck
from you.
theologian. You're a
Yeah.
redneck
Yeah.
theologian, though, Caleb. Like,
Yes.
think about this. Total side note. We're going to be off topic all day, but think about like to the first podcast. When you're like, I don't know anything. You know a lot of things, Caleb. You're way smarter than you let on to be, man.
I don't know about that, but
Or also at the very beginning of the podcast when we were trying to get the mics to work, and you were testing it with like a blanket over. Remember all that
yeah, let's
stuff?
not talk about
Total,
that. I I
side note.
recorded for like a month without anyways, yeah. Yeah. What were we?
So
Yeah.
okay, but so
So
yours says giants, which comes from the Septuagint. Mine over here, which comes from the Hebrew, says Nephilim. So okay, like it also says mighty men of renown. Was that the end? That was the end of four. Does yours
yes.
say talks about the mighty men of renown?
Yes. It said the same thing. It was pretty close.
Yeah. And so okay, so there's Nephilim. We got this idea of Nephilim of giants. What do you think that means? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so I mean, of course, bigger than the normal people, of course, but you know, yeah.
How
Now,
big? How big do you think the giants were, Caleb?
I'll use one example, and I'm gonna skip, and it's on your list here, and I had it down too. So I'm gonna skip to Deuteronomy chapter 3 real quick.
Ooh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so this is a very famous one, King Og, and I'll get to it real quick. So in Deuteronomy chapter 3, basically 1 through 11 in Deuteronomy chapter 3 is about King Og being defeated. Um, and Og, and this is kind of a good example of how big a giant would be. And it said, "For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants." So this is kind of towards the end of the giants. I guess actually, well, Goliath was after this. So, anyways, um, indeed, his bedroom or his bedstead. I mean, I'll get it right here in a minute. His bedstead was an iron bedstead, so his bed um, is not 9 cubits its length and 4 cubits its width. So basically, his bed was about 14 feet long and over 6 foot wide, if I remember that
Yeah,
right. I
yeah,
know it was
that's
about
about
14 feet. So basically, several things I read said roughly scholars think between 9 to 13 foot tall.
yeah,
So that's kind of a
yeah.
good example of the size of one of these giants.
Now it says that King Og was a Rephaim, right? Is that what does it say in Deuteronomy?
Yes, I believe so.
And
And
so
you can get into that.
um you say I can get into that. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. So this is one of those things that like I am actively studying and looking at right now. And I know there are a ton more learned people than me with fancy little letters after their name or before their name, right? And so if I understand right though, the Nephilim were what came down there. They were the sons of God. So they were the Nephilim, and the Rephaim were the offspring of the Nephilim, right? I mean, is that kind of what you're thinking,
Yes, and
Caleb?
also, and I guess essentially there's a thought, which I'm not saying I know any of this or I believe it or don't believe it. I don't know, but there's a thought that there were also tribes that came from the Nephilim, such as, so for instance, I'll back up just a little bit too, and you have this here, Deuteronomy 2, 10, and 11.
Yep.
And here's another instance of two different tribes. So you said the Rephaim, which, like if you go and read through Numbers, Deuteronomy, you get into Joshua, and the Israelites um, conquer Canaan, they go after a bunch of these tribes, and a lot of these tribes have giants in them. But so Deuteronomy chapter 2, 10, starting in verse 10, it says, "The Amim had dwelt there in times past, a people as great and numerous and tall as the Anakim." So right there in verse 10, that gives you two other tribes, the Amim and the Anakim. And then in 11, it says, "They were also regarded as giants like the Anakim, but the Moabites call them Amim." So 10 and 11, that gives you two other tribes, the Amim and the Anakim.
And then Anakim, Anakim, are they're also talked about in Numbers 13, verse 33 talks about the Anakim or Anakim, and then Joshua 11 also talks about that. So we've got these different tribes that have kind of like set up as Anakim or Anakim and Rephaim and Nephilim. What's really interesting is once you start kind of taking a step back and maybe looking at the Old Testament through just a little bit different of a look, is is it seems kind of more interesting and kind of I don't want to say more interesting. What am I trying to say here, Caleb? I'm probably just like
I have
maybe
no clue. I was
I
reading
lost
something.
I totally and completely lost my train of thought there. It'll come back to me at some point. No, 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 no. The conquest of what's the conquest when they went in and
Of
they were
Canaan.
there. Yeah, that place. The conquest of Canaan. And so when they went in and did the conquest of Canaan, they were fighting these other people in the lands, but they were also fighting these giants that were in these lands. And so it's like it it really adds like a whole new layer to the Old Testament and how everything just kind of fits together when you start taking a look and thinking about these passages in a different light, other than they're just like beating up on some people, which there were people there. So yeah, they were
Yeah,
beating up on some
and
people,
you know,
but
one another thing. My name's Caleb. My parents got the name from the story of Joshua and Caleb in Numbers, and I think I was looking for it here. Chapter 13 in Numbers, which you had just mentioned about,
yep.
and that essentially that story is the Israelites come up to the edge and they're like looking into Canaan, and they send 12 spies in, and basically they come back with these massive grapes, and they're coming back with this stuff, and 10 of them are like, there's no way, we can't do it. And basically they're like, there's giants in there, we can't do it. And Joshua and Caleb are like, and they say, be like, no, let's go. Like then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. You know, and it's the Amalekites in there. That is, like chapter 13, verse 28. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. So, like they're
Mm,
saying, there's giants in there.
yeah.
And then skip down to 32. The land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. There we saw giants. The descendants of Not came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight.
Yeah. I
So,
mean,
and then basically they get scared, and that begins the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness.
yeah. And I mean, so we have these like different setups of this idea of giants. I mean, even talking about you're talking about like Joshua, talks about giants. And so in Joshua 11 verse 21, talking about the Anakim, right? Uh, it talks about then Joshua came or at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country from Harab to Dabar and Ab. A lot of words. I'm terrible at names.
Say
I'm
that
just being
again.
honest with you. Har Heron, Heron, Dabar, and Anab. This is one of those ones where it's
You
like
nailed that.
I was always told that if you're going to like say Old Testament names, just say it with like conviction. And if you screw it up, just say it like it. Maybe there will be people out there who be like, man, Dustin, maybe I've been saying that wrong for my entire life, but Dustin's the one that said it right,
Yeah, no,
right?
you nailed it.
I nailed it. This is from the hill country. This is from all the hill country in Israel. Joshua utterly destroyed them with their cities. There were no Anakim left in the land of the sons of Israel. Only in Gaza and Gath and in Abzol some remained, which is really interesting. Okay. I mean, it talks about that there were only a few left in like Gaza, Gath. We know some of these places, right? I mean, I'd have to
Hmm.
really take a look, but it's like we've
Okay.
got the Gaza Strip right now in our day and age. Like, so it's like these places were there, you know?
Okay. So the other day you mentioned Gath. So who came from Gath?
Oh, what's his name? Why'd you have to ask me that? I
I
know what you're.
wanted to see if you knew it.
Go ahead and tell us, Caleb, because it'll come to me in like 20 minutes.
Goliath.
Goliath. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so
See.
the other day, I told you we went to this museum. There was a bunch of giants, so it's been on my mind a little bit here and there. So the other day, actually yesterday, I was with my son Holt, and I don't remember what brought it up, but I said something about giants, and he was like, "Giants aren't real," and I was like, "What are you talking about? Like the story of David and Goliath, like that Goliath was a giant." And he was like, "Oh yeah." And so I looked up a video and it was like giant. I just looked up giants in the Bible on you, I guess, yeah, on YouTube. And so I saw this video. And if y'all listening, y'all need to go look it up. Just look up giants in the Bible, and it comes up to this Expedition Bible. And it's this really awesome YouTube series where he does like all this archaeological stuff. But so I'm gonna give you some archaeological finds of potential proof of giants. So, and it's not like bones or anything, but so first off, well, yeah. So there's in the Israel Museum, okay, there are giant spearheads that are made of copper. And and by giant spearheads, the smallest one is 13 inches long, and the biggest one is 26 inches long. So if you look it up, they're massive, like these huge spearheads. And of course, so secular archaeologists think that these giant spearheads were decorative because they're too big to be, of course, why would they're too big? People can't use them, like they're massive. And of course, then biblical archaeologists believe, of course, well, they're spearheads, like there were giant spearheads, like for giants. And so they were found in a place called Kafar Manash. Okay. Now, also in Manash, he just called it Manash. So, also in Manash, sorry, had to cough there. Also in Manash, they found these scales, okay, these copper scales, like a massive pile of them. And I had it written down. Oh, real quick, before that, I want to go to 2 Samuel, and I had it marked here, 2 Samuel 21, verse 16. So I told you they found these massive spearheads, the biggest one 26 inches long. Okay, now I'll tell you this: if basically the biggest one weighed roughly 5 pounds, and so of course if you add a stick to it, it would be roughly 7 pounds. Okay, so if you go to 2 Samuel 21:16, then an Ishbi Benob, nailed it, who
Nailed
was
it.
one of the Ishbi Benob, who was one of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose bronze spear was 300 shekels, who was bearing a new sword, thought he could kill David, but then David's brother killed him. So he was a giant, and it said whose bronze spear, which these were copper, but this is a bronze. So this is an example of a giant spear in the Bible being used by a giant. So that's pretty neat. So
what did you
300
say?
shekels.
Have you done the math on that? I'm about to Google it right now.
It's roughly 5 pounds. So basically it
about
would
5
be
pounds?
about this, roughly the same size as this. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. So you can look it up to make sure. But the guy said basically it's roughly the same weight as this.
Okay, that's totally wrong. Never mind.
Now shekels I thought was money, so I don't know.
I was too. Like it says 66.8 to pound. I'm like, oh, that's okay. Never mind.
66.8 shekels per pound.
I don't know. Oh, okay. Here we go.
I've got
This
a
is gonna
calculator.
be-
I can do the math if we need to.
I'm trying to find it. How much weight in pounds is 300 shekels of brass? That's a lot. 7.8 pounds.
7.8 pounds. So
7.8. You're right. You're right on.
Basically the one in the Israel Museum, he said what he actually, I'm pretty sure, said maybe just a little bit smaller than the one mentioned in the Bible. But so in the Israel Museum, and you can actually look it up, massive 26-inch long spearhead that is used because it's also dented in multiple places where it like very clearly has been used, and like the tip has been a little bit. So examples of an actual spear found that has been used that matches a story in the Bible where, and one thing that's interesting about that verse is the fact that he said was the sons of a giant. So he was a giant, but also it mentions the size of the spear and the weight of the spear. So that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. And then there's an example of a spear that has actually been found that pretty much matches that. It's made out of
Yeah.
something different, but it pretty much matches the size of it. And then so also there they found these they called them shekels of bronze. So like and they have pictures of them in the video, and it's basically chainmail armor. And so basically as many as they found, they said secular archaeologists say like basically it's way, way, way too big for a normal person. So clearly it has to be armor for a bunch of people. They just put it all together. Okay. So it had to have been armor for a bunch of people. Or biblical archaeologists say, well, or it could have been chainmail for a giant. Okay. Now, the only other type of chainmail that has been found that's parallel to this, that's like the same kind of stuff that was found in Monash. Guess where it was found?
I would say in Gath, right?
In Gath.
Yes.
The only other type of chainmail that like this, and it's made out of bronze, and like it says the largest. Never mind, I don't remember. No, that's not. Um, they're these small rigid copper plates. There are about 800 of them found at Monash. The only other type, like I said, has been found in Gath. So I'm going to go to 1 Samuel 17:4. And this again, the home of Goliath. Um, can't turn my page here. 17:4. It says, and a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. So there's an example of a giant from Gath wearing this chainmail, and they have found in Gath a coat of mail or coat of this chainmail. So that's pretty cool.
See, I'm totally seeing 5,000 shekels just to, since we're having some fun, right?
Yeah,
Okay, 5,000 shekels puts Goliath's armor at 125 pounds.
that's a lot.
Have you ever, like, I know you have, Caleb, but you ever carried like 50-pound bag of feed,
Yeah.
right? And you chunk that on your shoulder, and even if you have to walk just a little bit, after a little bit, you're like, man, this is stinking heavy, you know? Or like I did roofing, right? And so I've done roofing. So you throw shingles on your shoulder to take them up there, and it's like 80 pounds. Like you could barely even do it. Yet Goliath here is hanging out with 125 pounds of just armor.
Yeah. And it has, you can actually, like, of course, if you went to Israel, you could actually see it, or you could watch the video and see the stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, this is like some really, really neat stuff. And I guess we're probably going to talk about some of this stuff in the next couple weeks with a few different people and a few different guests that are going to come on. But it really just makes you take a moment and stop and think about the spiritual aspects of the Bible, and all of these interesting things of, maybe why did God flood the earth? I mean, yes, the earth was completely and totally what it says depraved, right? And there was and man's thoughts were on nothing but completely evil. But then it's like also we've got the sons of God out here who are doing some weird, wild stuff. And even clearly something happened where there's still giants in the land even after the flood, whether they we could
And that's
there's like
something I want
multiple
to,
different theories on that, and I don't
yeah.
know where I really stand.
I
We
think
could
if we
talk
get
about
to,
that for a sec if you wanted to, but
I don't really know where I stand either. And I think we get to, if we get to go to the Creation Museum in Abilene,
yeah.
I think she'll have an interesting thought on that, but I don't really have a whole lot
Well, from what
on
from
that
what I
one.
understand, there's two theories, right? There's the second incursion theory, which I'm just going to be totally honest. I don't really like that theory. I just don't like the way it sounds, right? It's kind of the theory that the sons of God came back after the flood and did it again. So they did it again at maybe somewhere around the Tower of Babel, maybe I don't really know. So there's the
I
second
don't really
incursion
like that
theory.
one either. Yeah.
I just don't like it because it's like, well, okay, God completely flooded the earth. I mean, he took care of the problem. The other one is that the genes could have been dormant in the wives of Noah, of Noah's sons, and so Noah's sons took wives, which is totally possible. There's also a really weird and wacky theory out there that I heard a while back that talks about what's his name? Nimrod. Nimrod's the king who was over Babel, and that Nimrod did something and became a Rephaim. Like in that whole, he did something, he was, but that's getting into like interbiblical texts, and that's talking about some weird stuff like the Book of Enoch or the additions to Genesis or something, not Genesis, Exodus. I don't know, Moses, something in it. But like that's getting into those extra biblical texts that aren't necessarily canonical as I hold up the
Yes.
Bible,
Yeah.
you know, which is getting into some really wild and wacky theories. And so I will say, what Dustin just said are in fact just that, theories. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And who knows, right? And
Yeah,
so,
I
yeah.
do have one more thing real quick, and I meant to mention it earlier, but I forgot to. So, we talked about Goliath of Gath, and then we talked about the chainmail that's been found in Gath. And I told you the story where the verse in 2 Samuel 21 where it talked about the size of the spear. If you go down, I like this one. I need to read this one to my kids. I haven't yet. If you go down to so I'm in 2 Samuel 21 verse 20, and it says yet and basically in 2 Samuel 21:15 to the end of the chapter, it's in my Bible, at least, it's labeled Philistine giants destroyed. Okay, so
Yeah.
15 through 22 is just about them killing the giants from Philistine. So but it says, if you go to verse 20, it says, yet again there was a war at Gath, where there was a man of great stature who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number. And he also was born to the giant. So when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shemiah, David's brother, killed him.
Interesting. So 6 fingers and 6 toes.
Yeah. So
All
basically,
right.
and that's what's interesting about the stuff found in Gath. It says the last verse says these four. So I guess it's a story about four giants that are killed, and it says these four were born to the giant in Gath, and fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants.
And so David went out and slayed the 6 finger giant.
Yes, that's pretty cool.
And that is pretty neat. That's some, I don't know. There's some, if there is any take home, I guess you get from this podcast, other than listening to Dustin and Caleb just talk about giants for a little bit,
Yeah.
is is the Bible is full of just awesome, neat, maybe weird in some ways too, but the Bible is full of these things, and we believe that the Bible is inerrant and scripture is true. And so it's like these aren't just like fanciful stories that just happened in Joshua or fanciful stories of Genesis. These are accounts, these are scriptural accounts of the beginning of age. These are scriptural accounts of the conquest of Israel. I mean,
and
it's
and
neat.
this is something, and I heard this parallel, and this may be, I haven't thought about it a whole lot, so I anyways, I don't know what I think about it, but I heard a parallel of David defeating Goliath and defeating the giants. And David is kind of a messianic, what do you
Yeah.
call it, figure. And then they kind of paralleled it with Jesus and demons. There was kind of a parallel
Ooh,
between,
yeah.
David defeating and killing and going after and killing a bunch of these giants, to, Jesus and demons, because there's a thought that demons came from Nephilim somehow, which I don't
I was about
know
to
enough
say,
about that.
are you gonna go there, Caleb? Because like
Yeah, I did.
that's like a
Which,
whole nother layer to this, which is this is total. I think Dr. Burton, we've had him on before, and he actually does some study on this, and so maybe we could get him on to talk about like demonology and stuff. But I mean, that's what I've heard too, is that the Nephilim, right, the beginning of the ones, the sons of God, the Nephilim, those are the demons and the demonic creatures and stuff like that. That's where they come from.
yeah, and a lot of people, and this is, again, I haven't looked into this a whole lot, and basically there's a verse somewhere, and I don't know where, but there's some mention of, and I think it was the Rephaim being in Sheol, and that's kind of the thought of how that happened, or
Yeah.
something along the lines of Rephaim and Sheol eventually became, but I'm not saying I believe that or know that, or I don't know enough about that, but I heard it, so I said it.
You heard it, so you said it. That's exact. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
You heard it,
Yeah.
so he said it.
I
So
bet Blue's shaking his head right now.
okay, that's the best part. Is our pastor is definitely probably going to listen to this podcast at some point, and he's going to be like, "Oh man, those two guys are deacons at my church."
We need to get
You
him
know,
on and have him talk about some of this too,
I think
since he's
that
our
would be.
spiritual leader.
I mean, we totally talked to him earlier. I think, getting him on to talk about this would be some cool stuff and Tennessee. I mean, I don't know. I think it's awesome, especially what you talked about with the spears, just a little bit about how we have archaeological evidence of these large spearheads that completely and totally like confirm, some of the things that we have in scripture. And so it's just like there's archaeological evidence for even the weird stuff in scripture. And just neat, man. Just neat to
Oh,
look
for
at and think
sure.
about.
And I 100% believe that the giants were real and all this stuff. So, I mean, it's in the
I mean,
Bible. It talks
I do
about it a
too.
lot. And that's one thing I'll say, just kind of some advice. Don't be scared to read your Bible. Don't be scared to flip to the front of your Bible and start reading there.
Yeah.
Like I'm in the middle of, I started in January, started doing a read through the Bible in a year, and it's a lot of fun. Like I've done it several times, and go back, like start it. If you're not doing it, go back and read First Samuel, Second Samuel. A lot of these stories came from First and Second Samuel, the story of David. It's a lot of, I mean, it's really cool. There's a lot of cool stories that you need to read.
And I mean, it's just some neat stuff. And I mean, it really, instead of hitting some of the weird parts of the Bible and going, man, that's weird, I'm just going to set that aside and I don't know what to do with this scripture. Maybe take a moment and just pray about it and be like, God, help me to understand and realize what I need to know about this scripture. Because even, I mean, you mentioned Job at the very beginning. Job is, I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff in Job. I mean, the whole thing's like Satan goes before God and he's like, hey, man, what about your servant Job? And God's like, okay, you can do this, but you can't harm him. And then Satan comes back. He goes, well, that didn't work. Can I
Yeah,
harm him
yeah.
now, God? You know what I mean? And it's like, it's just really interesting to think about like this whole scene playing out in heaven. And it's like, well, why was it written that way? Well, maybe it was written that way because that's how things may play out in heaven. I mean, we don't necessarily know for sure, but what we do know is what we can read in scripture, you know?
Oh yeah. And I think, and we kind of started when we first started the podcast, some of those episodes were about how we believe that this whole book, the whole Bible, leads to Jesus. It's a story of, if you read this as, or at least I try to, and I want the mind frame of the Old Testament. All these books are Jesus is coming, the Messiah is coming, and then Jesus is here, and then this is what we do with it, with our lives, and so we can get to heaven, and Jesus is coming back. If you have that mindset, it's fun.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Well, that's probably a good spot to end it right in that general direction. And so, uh, you got any final words to close us off with, Caleb? The final thoughts. They better be deep. They better be hardcore. These better be the most intense thoughts of the entire podcast right here, Caleb.
All right, I'm going to read 2 Samuel 22:11.
Ooh,
He rode up on a cherub and flew, and he was seen upon the wings of the wind.
that's a pretty big bombshell to drop us off right there. That's a good spot to end it.
Yeah. I looked down and I was like, ooh, let's read that one.
Well, let's read that one. Well, all right. Well, that's a great spot to end it right there. Well, I will say, kind of right as we're heading out here, guys, if you like these sorts of episodes and stuff like that, shoot us a line, drop us a line, tell us something about it. Like, send us emails, that kind of stuff. We like getting emails, and so just tell us if you like this stuff. If you don't like this stuff, tell us about that too. That's fine. Just talk to us about these things. And so, all right. Well, I guess we're going to end it there. And thank you guys for listening. And yeah, we are the Redneck Theologians. That's who we are.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you guys for listening to Raising the Wild Ones podcast. I know me and Caleb are just a couple of redneck theologians, right? Kind of came up with that term a little while ago, and it's just kind of making us laugh. But that's really just what we are, right? Every single one of us is a theologian. Sit there and just think about the Bible, and me and Caleb are rednecks, so that makes us redneck theologians. And so we just thank you guys for listening to us. And if you want to just give us a holler and let us know about topics you may want to listen to, or things you may want to say, or if you have an idea for a guest host, or if you yourself want to be a guest host, just drop us a line. Just let us know. Just give us a ring on the old telly. Actually, not really. We don't have a cell phone number, right? But we do have an email, and you can send us an email, right, at raisingwildonespodcast@gmail.com. There'll be a link for that podcast down in the description. And so just kind of click on that and just let us know what you guys want to hear from us. And we like to hear from you guys too. We like to know what you guys think of our podcast. And so also just tell your friends, share it on social media. Just let people know when you're sitting down having a cup of coffee with your hunting buddies or fishing buddies. Just say, hey guys, listen to this podcast. It's these two rednecks, and they're kind of weird sometimes, but it's fine because they talk about some cool stuff. And so just let people know, and that's how the word gets out, and that's how it gets shared. So we just thank you guys so much for your support and for listening to us. And yeah, tune in next time for more from the Redneck Theologians.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to reach out and bring you some exciting news. Our Patreon is now live. Patreon is a way to support this podcast so we can keep it going. For $6 a month, which is the cost of a cup of coffee, you get exclusive content that is for members only. This includes special episodes, show notes, and early release of our upcoming episodes. As we grow, more will become available through our membership. Another exciting thing is that we will donate $1 out of the $6 membership fee to missions. This money will go into the hands of missionaries on the ground doing the Lord's work. We are working on this and will hopefully have a podcast episode where we interview the missionary soon, so stay tuned for this. So go to patreon.com/Raising the Wild Ones podcast, or click on the link to our Patreon site in the show notes below. Thank you for supporting this podcast, and God bless.